So my name is Kristine Ursfjord. I'm a product owner in Banking as a Service in Sparebank 1. And I'm going to talk a bit about how we have tried to make an introvert dinosaur into a more, extrovert chihuahua, maybe. So a little bit about who we are. Sparebank 1 is an alliance of 14 banks. The banks are competitors, but they collaborate when it comes to IT services. It has around 6,000 employees and is Norway's second largest financial institution after DNB. A little bit of history. So in 1996, which feels like ages ago, one of the Sparebank 1 banks released their first online bank. In 2006, the same bank had their first mobile bank. And if you look at the phone that's on the right there, that was the most sold phone that year. Can you imagine having your mobile bank on that? 2010, we released the mobile bank that we have today, which was for the entire alliance. 2012, we had more logins on our mobile bank than our online bank. That didn't hurt the online bank. The growth was still as it had been before, but in addition, our clients started to use our mobile bank. 2013-14, we had a broad use of APIs internally, and I'm stressing internally. 2014, the first watch bank. 2018, we released our mobile bank for kids, six and up. And I forgot in this presentation in 2017, we released our first chatbot, Banki. Ta-da! So the shift to digital services and digital possibilities also meant that we had a shift in goals. We realized that we needed to come out of our offices and collaborate more than we did before. We had to become more extrovert. And there are a few goals that came after that. 100% digital projects and services, and first and best on an open bank front. And this drawing has probably been drawn by a gazillion companies, because we will, of course, like everyone else, want to be in the middle, where our customers and not customers can buy our services and other people's services. So not a very unique idea at all, but we truly believe that the services that we offer today, the mobile bank and the digital bank, are great. And people seem to agree. And we already have the customers, around 600,000 that log into our mobile bank every day. And we already do the tricky bits, the security and the authentication and the login and all the compliance that can be very tedious if you're a bit smaller. And yes, 600,000 is not Google, and it's not Facebook. But compared to Google and Facebook, we have something else. We have trust. And this might be something that's fairly specific to the Nordic countries, but especially in Norway, people trust their banks. And when it comes to money or insurance, trust is super important. And even though what we define as trust changed with generations, it's still important when we make those decisions. But yes, the keyword that we had before was we wanted to be best on open, but as in publicly available, not necessarily always have to be free. So in 2015, we started our journey. The goal was to be able to deliver services to different digital arenas, our internal partners, like the mobile bank and the digital bank, but also external partners. And I stole something from a presentation that was earlier when it comes to using itself. We wanted to drink our own champagne. I credit that to Jason Harmon. But we had a few challenges. We had low maturity on providing APIs, and we knew little about the value that our APIs had. But of course, instead of investigating this like business thingy, we jumped straight to doing the technical stuff and started looking for the technical solution. So we, of course, had to have a platform. And here comes Axway. It turned out that with the specifications that we had, there weren't too many providers to choose from. We wanted to host on site. We needed it to fulfill the entire platform lifecycle, from publication to management, to client management, the developer portal, and this is where we landed. Axway is one of the sponsors, so if you want to meet them and have a much better presentation about the product than I will do, have a chat with them. But one note when it comes to platform. We totally underestimated the non-technical part of creating a platform. Legal framework. It's one of the hugest challenges, and it still is. Handling consumers needs a process, either handled by people or by automation. We're still where we were handling it by people. So keep it simple. Don't create the hugest organization structure because you're going to have a gazillion consumers. You won't have a gazillion consumers tomorrow. Keep it simple. Here, like in everything that has to do with sign. And if you decide to have a developer portal, your developers are not every developer. They know your context, your abbreviations. They have access external developers don't have. They're a sucky reference group when it comes to how a developer portal should be. So scope out. And do not underestimate the need for test data and a sandbox. Be a good partner. And I'm going to come back to that point a bit later. But we have one benefit when we started our little journey. We had consumers. Because we already had external partners, we had some internal partners that decided to go the gateway way instead of just hitting our services internally. One on the personal side, personal banking, another on the business side of banking. And also because our banks are competitors, they could look at themselves as consumers. And this was a huge benefit because it means that we could, while we were building our platform, confirm some of the hypotheses that we had on the way. But then, in our little time of joy and discovery and learning, this enter. And before I continue this presentation, how many here work in the financial sector? So, quite a bit. Well, for you that don't, PSD2 is a EU directive, Payment Service Directive, which basically meant that us, the banks, had to open up our data to other financial institutions. And none of you are going to believe me when I said this, but our initial thought was, yes! Collaboration! More data to everyone! Little did we know. Because it turns out that when you get something like this, it's end of fun time. And the only focus you get to have is compliance, which is boring, very boring. And in addition, compliance is not a really good strategy because it forces you to take a direction that you might not necessarily want to go. You get driven places that necessarily doesn't give you the most value. And for the PSD2, the direction kept shifting. It got accepted in 2016, supposed to be in effect this year. Norway it will be next year because we're not part of the European Union, but we pretend that we are. And then some changes was released last year, some changes was released this year, and they're breaking changes. So if you thought you were compliant, you're not compliant anymore. So yeah, you end up chasing your own tail, and you have nothing else to focus on. There were some good things, some common denominators. The platform was still needed, and it was a huge use case, and it's still a huge use case for our platform. But yes, you end up chasing compliance, instead of focus on what can give you value, both user value and monetary value. Because compliance is not a good business model either. Yes, you might not be fined, great, but it doesn't really give you much money either. Also for us, in the case of PSD2, it actually meant that the place that we could look for business shrunk. So, yeah, we weren't that happy in the end. And it's not the end. So we had to look at what can we do to change this. We need to get out of this running around chasing our tail for compliance. We need to be able to see what's in our vault. The data that we have, how can we offer this as valuable services? We needed to change from we can do everything ourselves to better together. And we needed to take API first. That started on the developer side as a technical thought. We needed to move it to the business side. We needed to get our business people to start thinking that this is actually products that can be sold or offered or just shown off that so that someone else could say, oh, if I put together that and that and that, that actually gives value. Because we aren't all compassionate. We're not gods. We can't think of everything. Someone else will have a great idea if we share what we have. And we also needed to make sure that the journey that we had taken with this little core team got expanded to the rest of the organization. This is work intensive. If you have the possibility to branch out API, publicly available API development throughout your organization from the beginning, it's a bit easier than if you bundle it all in one team. They tend to become the bottleneck after a while because they get to be very sought after resources, which is great for them, but it's not necessarily great for the organization. And of course, we're still working on all of these. And I think when I can say that the one we got most of is the change from we can do everything ourselves to better together. So partnering up has become of vital importance for us. But there are, of course, some challenges coming up too. We need to find a business model that works in our multi-bank compliance-based world. We seem to be stuck on it's either free, it's either kind of free, or you pay for it. There's probably a balance here that we haven't found yet. We still need to train people into thinking that the APIs are product because they seem to think of it as another transport protocol. And then when you look at the bank business people, they just go blank. And so it's like HTTP? No, it's not like HTTP. And we just retired our first API. And even though that means that we have the theory how to lifecycle things, we haven't really learned enough. And this is especially when it comes to client handling, because you have to care for this relationship. And since we don't have a massive amount of clients yet, the feedback from our first retirement is very small. And the last one, I think, if I remember my slides correctly, is test data. Because you want to have realistic, maintainable, good enough, flexible enough test data. And when it comes to banking data, it very quickly gets identifiable if you try to anonymize production data. So you have to build it from scratch, basically, which is time-consuming and a bit hard. But the value for the applications is tremendous, and that reflects back on you because they release faster, and the quality that they release with is better. So to invest in test data is super, super important. And we saw this because we were recently at the hackathon, and there were a few banks there, and the feedback was that because our APIs were well documented, there was a way to test them, they could easily see a lot of them opted to use our APIs, which was great learning for us. And the last challenge that we have is that we need to get back to fun. And I know this sounds super silly, but it's the best place to learn, because APIs are truly, truly funny. The interaction and possibilities you get with APIs are fun. The startups I met, it's been great fun. The use cases we have solved, they're all so funny. And the success we've seen with our like mobile bank, where 600,000 log on every day, more than once a day. It's funny. It makes you want to do it more. So we need to get back to the fun. Thank you.